Hey, welcome. It's December 21st, and this is my next installment of Mr. McLean's motivational message. And today we're going to be talking about excuses and accountability. I was introduced to a blog post last week by a writer, an author, and a speaker named Sam Silverstein. And I posted it on my Facebook page. And the more and more I thought about it, the more and more I thought, this is something I need to share with my kids. But one of the memories that it sparked in me takes me back to boot camp when I first joined the Marine Corps. I vividly remember the drill instructor telling me there are no good excuses. And it seemed like for the next 13 weeks, it was just emphasized over and over again. Every time you thought about or even mentioned something that even came close to an excuse, it was like not even close. No excuses were acceptable. It was take responsibility for what you did, fix it, and don't do it again. And of course, the Marine Corps has a purpose in all of that. They're training you for missions. They're training you for working as a team in very hostile elements, and there's no time to make excuses. There's only time to learn from them, move on, and not let it happen again. But getting back to this blog post by Sam Silverstein that reminded me of that, I'm just going to read it because I thought it was really good, and I will paraphrase a little bit here and there, but for the most part, I'm just going to read his post. He says here, I believe that accountability is the basis of all meaningful human achievement. I also believe that our first accountability is to the person we see in the bathroom mirror each morning. No, it's not always easy for us to start there, but it is the very best place for us to start. And it is much, much better to start with accountability to ourselves than it is to start with an excuse. Ultimately, accountability comes down to choices, the only things we truly own. Everything else that we think we own can be taken away. Our home, our cars, all of our possessions, even the people we know and love can leave us. And at the end of the day, the only thing that will remain will be the choices that we have made. Conscious choices are the opposite of excuses. What is an excuse? An excuse is a story that you tell yourself to convince yourself of something other than what's reality. Okay? And then once you've convinced yourself of that, then you try to sell it to others. And this is an important point because we always try to convince ourselves to buy into the excuse before we try to sell it elsewhere. We must learn to move beyond excuses. The number one reason people succeed in their personal life is that they don't make or accept excuses. I'll say that one more time. The number one reason people succeed in their personal life is they do not make or accept excuses. Successful people, and I think this is really important here, and I'm going to come back to this at the end. Successful people know that failure is a part of the success process. However, they don't use excuses that justify failure, and they don't let others around them get away with excuses either. Leaders are accountable. Leaders admit fault. Leaders do not make excuses. I'm talking about the excuses we use to get ourselves off the hook. I'm talking about the excuses we use to deny personal responsibility. I'm talking about excuses that we use to spin our own actions, to make them seem better than what they really were, to manipulate others and even manipulate ourselves. In the end, excuses are what we use to deny our own personal accountability. But what does accountability mean? Well, here Silverstein gives us 4 ways to view accountability. The first one is accountability means being accountable to ourselves. Accountability to ourselves is what happens when we decide we won't violate our own values and when we resolve to hold ourselves accountable to those values. Secondly, accountability means being accountable to other people. It's essentially to be accountable to others. When we make commitments to other people, we have to honor those commitments. Thirdly, accountability means understanding commitments others have made to us. People may give us excuses. Think twice before you buy into the excuse. When you accept an excuse from someone who's made a commitment to you, you take on that person's problems. Don't let someone else's problems become yours. And lastly, accountability means helping others stay accountable to themselves. This is what happens when people help each other to become more self-accountable. It's part of an accountability circle, a group where each person has the implied right to help someone else in the group to do a better job of maintaining commitments to themselves. So just as we need a pat on the back from time to time, we all need reinforcement when it comes to creating zones of accountability. And it starts with self-accountability. We live with ourselves 24/7, and if we don't care much about honoring our own values, about following through our own commitments to ourselves, we're going to limit our own potential and needlessly diminish what we can accomplish in this life. I thought that was a really good blog post. I'm just going to come back to one point here, and that is successful people know that failure is a part of the success process. Think about the last time you failed. What was your response? All the time when I see people fail, I see a response of a finger pointing, shoulders shrugging, like you see in the picture here, a look of don't look at me, it's not my fault. You hear people say things like, well, if only she or if only he, and they're blaming other people, or if only this circumstance weren't true, only if I had more money, if only I had more time, if only I had more energy, if only I hadn't turned my Xbox on and started playing the new Black Ops game. It's funny because when people fail, their first, reaction is to point at everything else other than themselves. And he says here, successful people know that failure is part of the success process. And here's what I think is most important. If we could only understand that failure is not a permanent condition. Failure is part of reaching success. I shared this with my students today. And I know not everybody can relate to basketball, but let's just pretend that you are joining a basketball team. And you know that being a part of that team requires you to make free throws. So you come up to the line for the first time, you have that ball, you bounce it on the floor a few times, you put it up, and you take that shot, clunk, you miss. Man, that rim is too high. There's no way I'm going to make it. That rim is so high. Get the ball again, bounce it on the floor, lift it up, throw, air. This line is just way too far away from the hoop. There's no way. This line is just too far away. I'm never going to make it. And what happens over time is as people see themselves failing, they just start making excuses, and before you know it, they're not even trying to shoot the ball anymore. They're just standing off to the side saying, yep, that rim's too high. Yep, that line's too far away. And they're starting to look at other people. Yep, you're finding the rim too high too, aren't you? And all they do is they rehearse their excuses over and over and over again to people. And they're never going to be successful. Instead of looking at failure as just final, look at failure as, okay, what am I not doing right? What do I need to do to make this? Let me keep trying. Let me keep trying. Let me keep trying. Until they make it once. They may miss a few more times, and they make it another time. Maybe they make it twice in a row, but they miss a few more, and then they make it again. They come back another day. They come back for a week. They come back a month. They work on it for a year. But you'll never make 10 free throws in a row without 1,000 failures. Think about life. Think about the times that you have succeeded. Those times that you have succeeded and reached high achievement have probably been preceded by 1,000 failures. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. However, if you keep using excuses, you're going to live in the world of excuses and you'll never see achievement. Because your life becomes all about excusing yourself and why you can't do it rather than working on what you can to achieve. So let me just challenge you out there to think about how you respond to failure. The next time something goes wrong, think about how am I responding? Am I pointing a finger away, or am I pointing a finger back at me? Am I getting back up? Am I saying, hey, I need to do better? Or are you giving an excuse? When I first started playing team sports, my first team sport that I played was soccer. I remember my dad giving me some advice. I think it's only real advice I think my dad gave me for team sports. I think he left most of that up to the coaches. But when I went to play my first team sport, all I remember my dad saying is, Chris, when you make a mistake, fix it. And, I'd get onto that soccer field, and sure enough, I would mishandle the ball. I would make a bad pass. I would miss a defense. I'd make a bad throw-in. And you know what I found myself doing? Running twice as fast to fix it. I wasn't going to sit there and throw my hands up in the air. I wasn't going to stay on the ground and throw my hands up. I wasn't going to look at the official to call a foul. I wasn't going to point at a teammate. I just took my dad's advice literally, and that is when I made a mistake, I was going to fix it. And that's what I think Sam Silverstein is saying here. Don't let failure become a culture in your life. Be accountable. Take responsibility for your failure. And once you've done that, you can start building from that learning process and moving on. I trust this was beneficial to you today. I know it was a little bit longer than some, but thanks for joining me, and please hit like, please subscribe to my channel, and please leave a comment if you would, and share this with some other people, and I look forward to talking with you again next week.